this is what I want to talk about. This is dear to my heart. Maybe everyone will hate this video and it gets 57 thumbs down, or it just gets ignored and no one watches it. But I hope that I can help one person, or I hope I can connect with one person who needs to hear this today, okay? There's an article right now on HuffPost, and it's called "The Real Causes of Depression Have Been Discovered, and They're Not What You Think." Okay, so that article exists. You can check it out. That's what this video we're making right now, that's what it's based off of. So it's implying that, yeah, the real causes of depression have been discovered and they're not what you think. I read the article and guess what? It is what I think. It's what I've always thought. It basically says the reason so many people end up depressed is because of some sort of childhood trauma that they never dealt with. They never had a release of shame. They never had some way to actually deal with it. And in the likeness of the movie Garden State, where what is an 8-year-old, he ends up on all these antidepressants and he doesn't get off them until his mid-20s. Because he ends in the process doesn't know how to deal with those issues, because ultimately he's been told you have a chemical imbalance. I don't have a problem with that. Chemical imbalance, fine, but I don't think chemical imbalance is the cause. I think chemical imbalance is the result of what happened in our childhood, earlier in our life, and we never dealt with it. Now, that's my opinion, but it's also based on a medical study. They did a study, and you can see it in this article, that the overwhelming number of people who suffer from severe depression had some sort of childhood trauma. Now, you could say, well, don't we all have some kind of trauma in our kid? I'd say, yeah, we all have some sort of wound, you know, when we think of what's the worst thing that happened to you as a kid or whatever. And in a way, it defines who we are. But some people are able to deal with it, to talk about it, to release that, in essence, make that part of their identity, while other people don't. Other people keep it in the closet. They're told that they shouldn't talk about it, or they feel they shouldn't talk about it. They end up getting on medication to deal with the chemical imbalance because they're becoming depressed, because they're not overcoming what they dealt with in any way. They don't learn to deal with it. So therefore, what's America's answer? What's Big Pharma's answer? Here you go. Take this the rest of your life. You've got a chemical imbalance. But see, the sad thing for me is, I personally know people who suffer from severe depression. And of course, obviously, I know the solution's not, well, just get over it. Cheer up. Obviously, that's not the solution. And I get it. Medication, okay, fine. But what I'm saying is, in addition to the medication, I feel the thing that we're leaving out on this side is this person getting the help that they need? I'm telling you, I know people personally who are severely depressed. If they're on the medication, I see them with their ups and the downs. But I know there is some part of their history that they're not sharing with everyone else. I can tell that in the behavior that I see. I have learned this throughout my life. I have seen people who will cover themselves completely in tattoos or piercings. They will go through such extreme things. And then ultimately, you may later find out, well, this is what happened to them when they were a kid. And it's a tragic story that they do all of these things. They try to create this dark identity of themselves, ultimately because they never had the release of shame that this article talks about. And it'd be one thing if this were all just my opinion. No, instead, this scientific study backs up what I've always thought about depression. Do they need, yes, give them their medications. Yes, but what about the core fundamental issue? I think it's a tragedy that we will just deal with the surface of it, take this medicine, but not deal with the core of the problem. And I understand that a lot of people may not want to deal with that. They may be too ashamed to talk about whatever happened to them. Have you seen that show on TLC, My Strange Addiction? I saw about 3 episodes of it and vowed I'd never watch it again. Because what I learned is, especially if they were women, they were abused when they were children. And ultimately they never dealt with it. They didn't, they didn't deal with it. They didn't get to talk about it. They didn't get to talk it out. They didn't get this psychological help they needed. They didn't deal with the psychology. And so they end up eating detergent. Or they end up swelling up to 600 pounds. Or maybe that's actually from an episode of My 600 Pound Life that I think is on the same network. But either way, I kept seeing that on these reality shows. These shows where we're supposed to watch and think, wow, that person's crazy. But then by the end of the episode, I feel horrible because I'm like, man, they had to experience that as a child. They were abused in that way. And this is their way of dealing with it because they've never dealt with it the way they should have, which was talking to a professional, which was talking to a doctor, about a psychiatrist, to a counselor. They never had that. So now they're getting their whole entire body tattooed and pierced, or eating detergent, or whatever crazy thing it is that we're watching on these reality shows, whatever it is, because ultimately they never dealt with, they never talked out what happened. That's a very important element in all of this. But can't you agree with me on this? At least this one thing. It's great that we have medications for people who deal with depression. Depression is a real thing. And it's not something you can just say, get over it. Cheer up. No, not at all. It's a real thing. But are we accepting the truth that people who suffer from depression typically have something that happened to them earlier in their life that basically taught them this lesson? You have no control over it. Just like you had no control over what happened to you, you don't have control over the rest of your life either. And that becomes their identity, that they have no control. But there's also people who have suffered traumatic events and they were able to work themselves through it, to talk through it with a professional, to deal with it, to make that ultimately, that dark part of them still part of their identity instead of hiding it, which makes it fester and get worse. They were able to get what they actually needed. They found that release. When I think about depression, for people who suffer from depression, I think the most tragic thing about it is any unresolved issues from their childhood. And I wish that America cared about this. I wish that America could have an open conversation and say, look, you suffer from depression? Let's get you help. Let's have you talk to someone who can help you through this. Instead, here's what America does. Big Pharma, here's what we do. You have a chemical imbalance. Here you go. Just take this the rest of your life. That's the solution. And if we try to even acknowledge that there was a psychological reason this happens because of something that happened earlier in life, if we even try to acknowledge it, then we're a jerk, right? We're the jerk who's ultimately saying, get over it. No. I'm not the jerk who's saying, just get over it, cheer up. Nor am I saying, just take this will make everything okay. I'm the guy in the middle. I'm saying, it's not about just medicine. And there is a way to deal with it, but telling someone to get over it's not to do it either. It's a matter of talking to a professional, dealing with that. Otherwise, people tend to be stuck in that mindset from when they were victimized as a child, or whether one of their parents died or left, or whatever it was that happened to them as a child that they never dealt with. It became part of their identity to keep that repressed and to keep thinking, I can't control anything. I couldn't control that happening to me. I can't control my future. I can't control who I am. I am just not in control of my own life. And I'm going to take these pills to continue making sure that I'm chemically balanced. And that is my fate. I don't believe that that's the end of the story. It's this article. I'm not making this stuff up. HuffPost. The real causes of depression have been discovered, and they're not what you think. So that's what I think. What do you think? Comment section right here.